WeatherTech is made right here in America, and it's perfect for an American-made summer. Because we cannonball into summer, hike all over it, slide down it, camp in it. It's one ice cream-covered, sandy, soaking wet mess of a season, which is why WeatherTech floor liners and seat protectors are a must. We are road-tripping, beach-going, lake-jumping Americans, and that's just how we summer. WeatherTech, made in America for an American-made summer. Visit WeatherTech.com today.
This is Peter.
And this is Tom.
And you're listening to History Teachers Talking Podcasts. All right, this is Peter Zablocki and Thomas Reska. Welcome back to our podcast. I was going to do that. No, I thought we agreed that I was going to do this.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. We are talking about Indiana Jones, and I guess not really Indiana Jones history, right? What are we
All right,
about?
so today we are looking at the, I guess the relics you want to call it. The relics that appear in the, or the artifacts that appear in the Indiana Jones franchise, and just basically what archaeologists say about them, because some of them are actually based on actual items that have the same name or a slightly different name, but and some actually do exist. I'm not saying the whole supernatural stuff, but they're out there, and so we're just going to take a look at some of these artifacts, the history behind them. The quest, a lot of times people are looking to try to find these. And even Indiana Jones himself, I know we've talked about in a previous podcast, is based on real individuals, a real individual.
As you mentioned, a lot of these things have some basis in fact. I mean, the thing that surprised me the most is probably the most disliked movie of the franchise is the Crystal Skull, right? The latest one?
Yeah, the latest one.
And what really got me is like when I started doing research for this is that there really are crystal skulls.
There really are crystal skulls. Yeah, we're not saying they're aliens and they're supernatural.
Yeah. But they're that's a thing.
They're a real thing. People have found crystal skulls, so I guess that's a place to start.
Yeah. Well, before we do that, we should probably say that if you have not seen Indiana Jones, then a couple things. One would be the fact that a lot of these things are going to be confusing to you. And two, why have you not seen Indiana Jones? I mean...
Yes, yeah. Don't listen to it, I guess, spoiler alert, whatever you want to do. But
yeah, I was going to say spoiler alert. But then again, these movies have been out 40 years ago.
80s. So you know what? We're not really giving away the plot. It's just a little bit about the artifacts, like we said. We're looking a little bit, not really history versus Hollywood, but the history behind some of these artifacts and relics.
Yeah. The real person who this is based off of is not as adventurous, I guess, right? You know, especially when ancient tombs are not really like booby trapped. The real Indiana Jones that this is kind of based off of is Roy Chapman Andrews. And he was born in 1884. And he moved to New York City immediately after high school and took a job at the American Museum of Natural History. And then it wasn't long before he was in the field as an archaeologist. And he himself counted 10 times that he almost died in the course of his work, including drowning during typhoons, being charged by a dying whale, which I thought was interesting, being attacked by wild dogs, fanatical priests, falling over cliffs, several venomous snakes, a python somewhere in there, and just bandits, trying to kill him. So he apparently told all these stories, and they became kind of common knowledge. And he never really squared off against the Nazis like you had.
Well, no, it was kind of before the Nazis' time, though. But he was in the Gobi Desert, like you said, right? He found a bunch of dinosaur skeletons.
Yep.
He was well known. He was famous for the time.
He was fairly famous, and now it kind of became the basis of this like adventurer that is an archaeologist, and as opposed to being like a boring archaeologist, I guess if that's a thing, that sits there with like a little paintbrush trying to dust things off. This guy pretty legit. So again,
George Lucas has never come out and said that Indiana Jones is Roy Chapman Andrews, but it's it's that his influence is definitely there, and especially in the first film, Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's out there.
I mean, we could start off with the latest one, Crystal Skulls, and then we'll work our way backwards. So kind of mentioned briefly this idea of Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skulls, which I was not aware of the fact that was a real thing. It is, right? So should we do like a synopsis of the movie and what the point of that is? Or
no, I think we just talk about the skulls themselves.
The skulls.
We're not here to talk about the movies. It's not a movie review podcast. Indiana Jones, what he's doing, he's looking for the skulls, right? Actor.
The most famous crystal skull, apparently they are a thing, was unearthed by a British explorer, F.A. Mitchell Hedges, in 1924. He claimed that his daughter, Anna, actually found this skull, and it was buried under a collapsed altar inside a temple in Belize somewhere. And Mitchell Hedges basically took this skull and started like touring with it. Like, in a sense of like, look, I found this skull, and he started bringing it to different museums and so on and so forth. And eventually he winds up turning it over to a art restorer named Frank Dorland. And Frank Dorland is the one that actually starts to test this skull that was found in the 20s. And he discovers a few interesting things. One thing he discovers is that this glass crystal skull was carved against the natural axis of the crystal, which apparently is not really doable, because if one does this, it would shatter the skull and the glass. And then there was no microscopic scratches whatsoever on the skull that would indicate that it was carved with a metal, which would be the one thing that you would actually use to carve this with. So there's a lot of mystery behind this skull that was found in 1924. There are similar crystal skulls that also have been found on display at the British Museum. And to this day, really, archaeologists know that they are old, but they still question the origins and how it got into the movie with like, this must be aliens instead of just like an earthly thing.
There was a string of like fake ones, I guess, from like the 80s and things like that, in early 2000s. You were seeing them, they were able to prove that they were done by modern jewelry techniques, because it kind of became more of a famous thing. But yeah, they're on display in Paris, British museums, like you said. This Mayan and Aztec ones out there. So a lot of these cultures, again, all different sizes. Some are, small, the size of like just like apples and stuff like that. And there's ones the size of like bowling balls. So they're all over the place, and they are real. And in a lot of the articles that I read, they said that out of all of the artifacts in the Indiana Jones franchise, that the crystal skulls are by far the closest to real life items. Like, this is totally
kind of crazy
on these things, as far as they know they do exist. They're not saying any otherworldly powers, that they're made by aliens. That's a whole other thing, right? But that these crystal skulls are real. You can find them, and yeah.
So working backwards, I guess we'll go to the third movie, which was Indiana Jones:
The Last Crusade.
Yeah, which is awesome. Cool. I love that movie. I've seen that movie so many times, even as a kid. It was definitely my favorite Indiana Jones movie. Yeah. But of course, we are talking about the Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail, which is a huge thing. Yeah. This is what the Crusades
traditionally,
over, right?
Of course. Traditionally, it's thought to be the cup that Jesus Christ like drank from at the Last Supper, right? And then apparently Joseph also collected Jesus's blood at his crucifixion using that very same cup. And of course, most of this comes from ancient legends. Eventually, kind of spearheaded by a lot of movies and books and so on and so forth. But the Holy Grail itself is obviously an object of mystery, right? So people, like you said, since the Crusades have been trying to find this thing. And the problem is that there's so much myth and legend surrounding it that to this day, even for scholars, it is very difficult for them to distinguish what is fact and what is fiction when it comes to the Holy Grail.
And there's so much with the Holy Grail too, like you said, but like, whether it's fact or fiction, a lot of people believe it was fact, especially in like the ancient, these medieval time period and stuff like that. So they're looking for it any way they can, because it's kind of a lot of the research that they kind of combined a lot of like pre-Christian, like Celtic mythology, right? Mm-hmm. I kind of wove in with this Christian legend. It could not have been a cup. It could have been like a stone, a goblet, right? A platter, so many different things, a dish that people have said it could have been over the years. There's written about it even as far back as 1180, right? There's different types of reference of it in text and things like that, looking for the Holy Grail. And it's believed to be able to grant the whoever drinks from it, even heal them from injuries or make them younger or preserve their youth. It's a lot of times it's linked to King Arthur. It's linked to the Knights Templar, right, and the Crusades.
Yeah, apparently the Templar, didn't they steal it? Apparently, they're the ones that like did it. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that was the idea. Apparently, that's again legend, fiction, fact, fiction. We don't really know, but apparently the Knights Templar actually found this and then tried to protect it. And basically, during the Crusades, they kind of like hid it away, and therefore we don't really know where it is. By adding King Arthur to it, and which is often associated, like King Arthur does kind of fall into the story of the Holy Grail. I think that kind of makes it a little bit more fictitious as well, though, and not fake, but.
Well, there was a King Arthur, I mean, they believe. Like,
but he's such a mythical literary.
They think it could have been several kings, right? Again, it's something we could have talked about at some point, but it's supposed to be like several kings. But again, that goes with this. Like, they're not really sure what the Holy Grail even is. Like, is it a cup? Is it not? That's something that you see in the movie, if you ever watched the movie. But I did see that in 2014, there was these two Spanish historians that claimed they did discover it at a church in Leon, northern Spain. And then they had
Leon, Spain.
Leon, and since 11th century, and they did some dating on it. They're somewhere between 200 BC and 100 AD. It's a pretty big time span, but obviously there's no They did these
but
data on them for
around the
3
time,
years. Yeah, I mean, so it's old
yeah,
enough that theoretically it could be, but it's also there's no way
it
to
could
actually
be. Yep.
prove it was or not. And there's really a lot of scholars debate whether or not it ever even existed, or if it's just like a legend. So that's another part of it too. But it's no matter
Yep.
what it is. If you mention the Holy Grail, I mean, people are going. It's part of pop culture, right? It's in movies. Obviously, Monty
Yep.
Python, the Holy Grail, right? That's all about it. The
Yeah.
Last Crusade. There's a whole bunch of movies about it and
I
stuff
love
like that.
that. I love that movie.
You know, so there's so many, books and things about it's part of pop culture. People know what the Holy Grail is, basically. They might not crystal
Yep.
skulls, they might have been like, oh wait, that's real. Those actually are real. But the Holy Grail is more they've heard of that. Whether or not we believe or not, but the people back then definitely believed it was a real.
Absolutely. And actually, the grail that these people found church in 7th century is actually one of 200 alleged grails that fit the description of being also that old that we know are in existence around the world. So there are about 200 cups or somewhat, you might want to say, that
Drinking
exist from that
apparatuses.
time period. Yeah, that exists from that time period. So therefore, if you follow along with this idea that this is indeed a chalice, some form of a cup, then therefore there is possibility that any of these 200 cups could potentially be it. But again, I mean, that's the premise in the movie, right? It was to give youth. I mean, I guess that kind of falls
Yeah,
under that.
eternal youth. But if you drank from the wrong one, you died. Right? I think I remember.
Oh yeah, I do remember that. What a great
So
movie.
that was just like Steven Spielberg stuff. I didn't see anything about that actually happening, but who knows?
Yeah. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, often actually viewed before Crystal Skull as like the worst one of them.
Really?
I
I always
actually
that
like
one.
this one. Well, it's a prequel. A lot of people don't realize that Temple of Doom is a prequel. So if you really if you watch them, you should really start with this one, then go to Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then go to the Last Crusade. So yeah, I mean, I never watched it that way because we watched them when they came out. Yeah. Although not the first one, we weren't alive when the first one came out. Wasn't it 81?
Yeah, well,
I thought it was like 81.
We grew up
I think,
with it.
yeah, we definitely grew up with it. That is the truth.
Did you know about Indiana Jones in Poland or no?
Yeah, I knew about Indiana Jones in Poland. Actually, I did. But when I watched Indiana Jones, that's a valid question. First time I watched Indiana Jones was it was in German. So everything that came from the United States it came through via like West Germany or West Berlin. So, we would have Indiana Jones that was literally in German, and they would have different dubbing in German. And then sometimes we got to watch it in German. Sometimes we got to watch it in German with Polish subtitles. And sometimes we got to watch it in German and then dubbed over in Polish with one dude doing all the voices. That was usually the case.
But then that's how I experienced it, so that's good.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, this is so cool. But what we didn't have in Poland, though, is Young Indiana Jones, which I didn't know existed until I came to the U.S. So Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom, basically the premise here, I know, right? We're talking about these stolen Sankara, right? Sankara stones. Yes. I think the idea was that there was some like the god Shiva supposedly in the movie puts powers into these stones, and whoever has these stones, it gives them the ability to like have like happiness and luck or something along the lines.
Yeah, well, like those stones themselves were the Shankara stones. They were invented by George Lucas, but they are basically based on stones named the Lingam.
Yep.
That basically they look exactly the same. They have very similar symbols and stuff on it. They're stones and they have the carved symbols on it, and they deal with the Hindu god Shiva powers, like you said. The 5 stones invest in magical properties that they could use to combat evil. So it's very similar. He just could basically change the name of them, pretty much.
Yep. And they said that the lingam itself, the lingam stones, essentially, if you look at it, it's like a short cylinder looking stone, right? It's a symbol of Shiva, and it's made out, usually made out of stone, metal, wood, clay, whatever. And then it is attached to a base, which is kind of like a flat saucer-like base. And it is often used to pray, essentially. Yeah, so, I mean, there is some basis to it. Obviously, not to the extent that you have in the movie where they like start glowing and giving people powers.
Yeah, there's none of stuff like that. Yeah.
It's more like a symbolic thing, almost like a Christian cross. I would say. Yeah, it's more like a cross.
Obviously, it's a movie and stuff like that. But yeah, they do look virtually the same, very similar, especially the symbols and stuff written on them and everything.
And then brings us to the first one. I don't know how we started backwards. I guess we started backwards because like the crystal skulls were like the most legit. But the Ark of the Covenant. right? The Ark
Which
of the
again is
Covenant.
something that could be real, could not be real. There's some basic debate, but the Ark of the Covenant is basically the what it's like that.
Well, it's supposed to be the place where you have the Ten Commandments are stored into.
It's what's left of
I
them,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, right. Ultimately, I think that was the whole premise of the Ark of the Covenant. And again, it's very similar from what we hear about the Ark of the Covenant. It's very similar premise. Is that made out of wood? Supposedly, it was covered in gold. It had these elaborate. I think they were supposed to be not eagles, but maybe eagles, some kind of birds of prey on top of it. And supposedly, this chest is filled with tablets that are engraved with the Ten Commandments, and they are engraved by God, if you believe in Christian scripture, rather. And they're given to Moses. The ark is constructed by Israeli people when they're camping out in the Sinai desert after they fled Egypt. And the Hebrew Bible doesn't necessarily say when they fled Egypt. And there's also a lot of debate as to whether there really, was or when there was these massive exodus from Egypt. But the ark is constructed during this time. The Ten Commandments are put in it, and then the ark kind of vanishes when the Babylonians conquer Jerusalem in 587 BC. Apparently, same premise. The ark has a seemingly magical powers, according to the Hebrew Bible. Like if it was taken into battle, it would help.
Yeah,
The
they would actually
Israelis
take it to
win.
bow themselves, and they kind of took this with the movie itself, but like it was so sacred that if you touched it, it meant instant death.
Yep.
That's what they're saying. So and it's what they're looking for in the movie. The fact that they talk about all this, right? That it went
Yep.
missing in the 6th century BCE, and that they're trying to find it throughout. And that's the movie where he's chasing like the Nazis and stuff like that.
Yep.
But there's a lot of like theories about what happened to it. I believe something could have happened to it in 14th century Ethiopia, right?
Okay.
That the Queen of Sheba visited King Solomon in Jerusalem during the 10th century and had a son by him. And on her journey home, the son returned to Jerusalem once he was of age. And although he chose to go back with his mother, Solomon sent him with a company of Jewish warriors. But unbeknownst to Solomon, that their companions, frustrated about leaving Jerusalem, decided to take a souvenir with them. And that the souvenir with them was the Ark of the Covenant. And it was too late for Solomon to retrieve this vessel. So the son brought the Ark with him to the city of Axum, and with the ark inside, and later conquered a number of surrounding territories that would help become the Ethiopian Empire. So they're saying, basically ancient Ethiopia, the reason that empire thrived was Melik, which is the son's name. He basically did this because he had the ark by his side during this time. So
Okay.
it kind of goes into all that sort of stuff.
Makes sense. And I think the first movie really plays up this. Makes sense. The first movie, The Raiders of the Lost Ark, kind of plays up a lot of things that are more or less based on fact that surround this idea of him trying to get the Ark. First of all, the fact that Nazis really were very interested in archaeology. Yep, they were interested in archaeology. We know, this knows for a fact. We know that these archaeological digs that by the Nazis and the interest in it really stemmed from Heinrich Himmler, who was like a really top Nazi, and he has scientific training, but he also strongly believed in the occult. And there's so many documentaries and books about it, right? Like Nazis and the occult. But the premise here was that he tried to use archaeology as a way to prove that a German civilization had existed long before other cultures. So there really was, this idea of trying to prove Nazi superiority through archaeology, which is why this really made it into the first movie. There was some basis in that.
Well, yeah,
and the
like they
ark
said,
being the ultimate,
yeah, like
goal.
it's definitely, most historians say it existed at some point. It's talked about too much in history to describe how it looked like, a bit too much in history, like the mercy seat on which the two stones, right, the wood, like you said, covered in gold. So it might not exist anymore. It might not actually have been the 10 Commandments, or whatever, but something called the Ark of the Covenant did exist at some point. Well, most historians believe that it was probably destroyed or lost to time, but it was a real item at some point that now has all this legend and stuff attached to it.
We could probably, not should, but we could probably do a whole episode on Nazis and the occult and like Hitler's supposed goal of trying to find all this stuff.
Destiny, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Grail and the Spear of Destiny. Like that was the whole thing when Nazi Germany was not doing so well. It was this idea of like trying to find some like super intense holy stuff.
And that spawned a whole bunch of like, if you watch like those Hellboy movies, they talk about that. Obviously, like the first Captain America deals with that. So I mean, it's become part of culture too, part of like pop culture as well. These artifacts, and
absolutely.
tying in with we talked about there with the Nazis.
Do you have anything else? I mean, I don't really have much else.
No, I mean, I think it was just interesting to see that some of these things actually did some of the history behind these things. There's a lot more stuff. We just kind of touched the surface. There's like tons of stuff written just about the search for the crystal skulls, just about the search for, obviously, for the Holy Grail. I mean, that part of the Crusades is looking for Holy Grail. Obviously, it's the Holy Land, but also the Holy Grail itself, but the Knights Templar and everything like that. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on with these things, history behind it. This is just, giving a little bit of like the facts behind the fiction.
And Indiana Jones is just a great. I mean, actually, I think I'm just going to watch
making
this.
another one. I believe
they are, but he's like, isn't he 80?
Yeah, I know.
Like, I'm almost positive he's like 80 years old. I mean, I don't see him trying to climb like hanging bridges.
Yeah, but he's Indiana Jones. He can do whatever he wants.
That's right. I mean, I can't see them trying to reboot that. Like, that needs to be just like they keep on trying to reboot Terminator by always having Arnold in it, because Arnold is the Terminator. Same thing here. Like, Indiana Jones is Harrison Ford. There's not much you could really do there. I always liked the idea that he was a teacher. Like, I thought that was so cool.
That's why he wanted to be a teacher.
I mean, I don't know. That's what maybe like
Indiana Jones. There would be no History Teachers podcast. Is that what you're saying, Peter?
I don't know. I mean, right? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I guess subconsciously, I don't know. But it would be cool, right? To like go find artifacts in the world instead of like, doing lesson plans. But hey, struggle's real. So I think that concludes our short, right? But I think still fun, more or less.
Informative.
Informative. I mean, see, if we started talking about the movies, this could have been like an hour-long one, but you said no. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much, guys, for listening and tuning in once more. We greatly appreciate it. And if you need to find us, you can find us at www.historyteacherstalkingpodcast.com. Please feel free to shoot us an email. Any suggestions, comments, whatever, we'll take it all. So thank you so much, guys. And until next week.
Stay safe, everybody.
I hope everyone enjoyed our podcast, and if you would like to email us, you can do so at historyteacherspodcast@gmail.com.
Keep your wellness routine going strong all summer. Kachava's new travel packs help you stick to your daily ritual even when you're on the go. Just one packet of Kachava's all-in-one nutrition shake provides complete nutrition wherever you are, with 25 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, greens, adaptogens, and more. Simplify your daily ritual. Go to Kachava.com and use code FITNESS for 15% off. That's KACHAVA.com, code FITNESS.